Hi, this is Lisa. In this video, I'm going to talk about factoring trinomials with the AC method. This method is important when you do not have just x squared or a leading coefficient of 1. Our method here, step 1, multiply the leading coefficient and the constant term, a times c. Look at all possible ways to factor the product, a times c. Choose factors that add up to the middle coefficient b. Use these factors to split the middle terms into two terms. Factor by grouping and check by multiplying. So we're going to use this method on this trinomial. So our first step, we're going to identify leading coefficient and constant term, a times c. In this example, a times c is 6 times 2 or 12. Now we're going to look at all the possible ways to factor 12. Now, in my polynomial, all of my terms are positive, so I know when I factor, all of my numbers are going to be positive. 12 is 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Again, I started with 1, and then I went to 2 and 3. Once I get a number over here and I've started to kind of wrap around again, I know I have all the possible combinations. And I want to see now which of these factors add up to my middle coefficient b. So do any of these add up to 19, my middle coefficient? That's where I'm getting the 19 from. 1 plus 12 is 13. 2 plus 6 is 8. 3 plus 4 is 7. There are no possible combinations that will work in this trinomial. So I know my answer here, this trinomial is prime. Prime is another way of saying it does not factor. So we're going to move on to the next example. Example number 2. A times C is 35 times 2, or 70. And then we need to look at all the possible combinations of 70. Now this time I do have to be concerned with positives and negatives. I have a negative sign here. The only way to multiply to get positive 70 and add up to a negative 17 is if both of these terms are negative. Negative 1 times negative 70, negative 2 times negative 35, 3 doesn't work, 4 doesn't work, negative 5 times negative 14, 6 doesn't work, 7 is negative 7 times negative 10, 8 doesn't work, 9 doesn't work, and I already have 10 there. Once I find all of those, I want to look to see which ones will add up to give me that middle coefficient of negative 17. And when I look here, negative 7 plus negative 10 is negative 17. Now in this method, it says you're going to split that middle term up into two terms. So our first term is still 2x squared, but now our middle term, I'm going to split that up and have it be negative 7x, negative 10x, and then our last term was plus 35. So if you look, negative 7x minus 10x gives you that negative 17x in the middle. And now we're going to factor by grouping. So I group the first two together. And then when I group the second two together, notice I have this negative sign out here. If I put my parentheses here, I have to change both signs. Okay? The 10x becomes positive and the 35 becomes negative. And then I'm going to factor each group. Common factor for my first group is x. If I take out 1x, so I'm going to cross those out. I'm going to take out 1x there and 1x there. And what I'm left with is 2x minus 7 inside parentheses. I have my minus on the outside, and if I think about 10x, 10 is 5 times 2, and we have a factor of x, minus 35 is 5 times 7. I have a common factor of 5. So I'm going to write the 5 down, and in parentheses what I have left is 2x minus 7. Close parenthesis. Now if you notice, both of the parentheses contain exactly the same polynomial, so that's my common factor. Factor out 2x minus 7, and in parentheses what's left is x minus 5. And now my polynomial is completely factored. It is completely factored when the only places where you have addition or subtraction signs are inside a set of parentheses. We're going to do the same thing here with example 3. We're going to factor by grouping. So first we multiply a times c, and I'm going to use my calculator for some of this. So a times c, we have 6 times negative 24, which gives me negative 144. So I need to come up with all the factors of negative 144 that are going to add up to a positive 7. Factors of negative 144, I have to have positive and negative factors. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole list here. I'm going to kind of cut it down into just a few factors. So just in the effort to save some time here, I'm going to just start breaking this down. It could be negative 12 times positive 12. It could be negative 24 times 6 or positive 24 times 6. It could be 16 times negative 9 or negative 16 times positive 9. And in the effort of saving time, I'm not doing the whole list here. I'm just doing some of them. But I have found the correct combination here. My middle term on this one is positive 7x. And if I add a positive 16 and a negative 9, I get a positive 7. So I'm going to split the middle term up. We're going to have the same first term, 6x squared. Then our middle term is going to become, and I like to put the negative number first, negative 9x plus 16x minus my last term, which was 24. Now when I factor by grouping, and I group the first pair together and the second pair together, I don't have to worry about a change of sign. Common factor between the first pair is 3x, and I'm left with 2x minus 3 plus. Common factor between the second pair is 8, and I'm left with 2x minus 3. Common factor is what's inside the parentheses, 2x minus 3. And what's left, 3x plus 8. Goes in the second set of parentheses. And my polynomial is completely factored. I have another example for you. This is going to be our last example. A times c, 10 times negative 12 is negative 120, and I need factors of 120 that are going to add up to give me negative 7 in the middle. And I need a positive and a negative. 1 times negative 120, negative 1 times positive 120, 2 times negative 60. I'm just going to keep going here. 3 times negative 40, 4 times negative 30, 5 times negative 24, 6 times negative 20, 7 doesn't work, 8 times negative 15. Difference between 8 and 15 is 7, and I think that's the right combination. 8 and negative 15 are negative 7. So the way I want to break up my middle term is by the 8 and the negative 15. So same first term, 10m squared, minus 15m plus 8m, and my last term was minus 12. So on these, I always, if I have a positive and a negative as my factors here, I always put the negative one first. And I'm going to add my parentheses to group the first pair together and the last pair together. And then I'm going to start looking at common factors. 10m squared and 15m have 5m in common. If I factor that out, I'm left with 2m minus 3 plus 8 and 12 have a common factor of 4. If I factor that out, I have 2m minus 3. My parentheses here now are exactly the same, so the common factor is 2m minus 3. And what I'm left with is 5m plus 4. And my polynomial is factored. Now I want to go ahead and multiply this out just to show you that you can check your work. And it's a good idea to do this on, especially on a quiz or a test. So first, 2m times 5m is 10m squared. 2m plus 4 is plus 8m. Negative 3 times 5m is negative 15m. And negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. When I combine my like terms in the middle, 10m squared minus 7m minus 12, that's the original polynomial. I know I have factored correctly. And that concludes the video on factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient, not 1.